2013 Ford Explorer XLT, front brake pads and rotors. All right, so your rotor looks like this. You have the 352 millimeter rotor, and that means you'll take the 352 millimeter type pads also. All right, so we're gonna do front brake pads and rotors on this. So basically you need to jack it up and support it properly. Remove the front tires, 19 millimeter for the lug nuts. Be careful because this one was corroded on there and they were hard to remove. If your tires don't come off easily, put a lug nut back on and hit the back side of the rotor on this part of the rim, not here. You'll crack it right here. All right. If you got a sledgehammer, put a block of wood up in there and hit the block of wood with the sledge, or use a big dead blow hammer. Okay. So now we got the tires off. Now what we need to do is remove our caliper assembly. So you need to remove your two caliper slide pins, and those are a 17 millimeter. And take notice that the top one takes the rubber insulator on it. So remember that, top takes the insulator, the bottom one is just a plain one. Okay. So I need to get this one out. It's a little stuck. But anyway, then you can get yourself a flat blade screwdriver and pry up the caliper assembly from here, like that. And then also you can stick your flat blade screwdriver in between the piston and the rotor and push the pistons back in a little bit. Okay, so that'll ease the removal of the caliper. And make sure when you get the caliper off, you can put it on a J hook, hang it from your strut, or bring it over here off to the side. Try not to let it hang by the brake hose. And also what you want to do is you want to inspect your brake hoses, make sure they're not leaking or wet, and don't see no cracks, okay? If you have those problems, then you need to replace them. Brake caliper is off. What you need to do is flip it over and inspect your boots, see if they're torn or have any fluid leaking out of them. If they're okay, then you can go ahead and keep them. If they're torn, then you should be replaced, okay? All right, next thing you need to do is remove your caliper bracket. And those two bolts on the back side are 18 millimeters. There's two of them, one here and one right here, okay? You need to remove both of those to remove your caliper bracket. So make sure you hold on to your bracket when you remove the last bolt so it doesn't fall on your foot. If your piston's having a hard time being pushed in, make sure your line is not pinched, okay? But if it's not pinched and you're having a hard time pushing them in, make sure they're not crooked, all right? And if it is a hard time pushing them in, you gotta make sure that you don't have a frozen caliper or a restricted hose, okay? By finding out if it's a caliper or a hose, you're gonna have to release the line pressure off this line. If pistons don't push back in with this line loose, then it could be the line or the caliper. Next thing you need to do is go ahead and loosen the line up on the caliper. Try pushing the pistons in. If the pistons push in, then it's not the caliper, it's the line. If the line's loose and you still can't push the pistons in, then you got a faulty caliper. Okay? So once you got the pistons pushed in on your okay caliper, you can go ahead and brush it with a wire brush, okay? Get the dirt out of there and the rust. And then you can go ahead and remove your caliper bracket. Here's what your caliper bracket bolts look like, okay? They're probably a torque to yield bolt that should be replaced, but I reuse them. It's okay. I get away with it. All right, so now here's your caliper bracket. You need to remove your pads. Get your pads out of there. this one's kind of frozen a little bit, won't move. So, stuck in there. Alright. Reason why they get stuck in there is because these brackets, they'll rust up inside there underneath your hardware abundant clips, and when they rust they expand, and when they expand they squeeze on those brake pads, and they won't allow those brake pads to move around inside the bracket very well, and then you'll get abnormal wear on your brake pads. So gotta clean that rust up inside there, and then after I get that cleaned up I spray paint them a little bit, and I'll let them dry, and then I'll put my new clips inside there. And when I got it off, I'll go ahead and put some new Sil Glide on my pins and rub my pins with some Sil Glide, and then I'll work them inside here. Do not pack your caliper brackets with Sil Glide. You will not be able to get your caliper pins in because you're trying to compress it. You can't, and that won't work, okay? Yeah, my caliper brackets all cleaned up. And you get them all shined up, or I don't try to remove any metal. I'll use my angle die grinder with a sandpaper disc on it. That works pretty good for me. And then I'll go ahead and spray paint it, put some paint on them, and then when it's drying, I'll go ahead and work on my rotor. So now all you need to do is get your rotor off. You need to remove the hold down bolt, which is a Torx 40. Hopefully it doesn't break loose or break your Torx bit. If it breaks your Torx bit, then you have to get yourself a chisel and try breaking it loose by turning it on the side by hitting the chisel. Okay? And if that don't work, then you have to cut an X in it with the die grinder and get your impact chisel and bust out those little pieces, the quarters that you cut in it. Then you can go ahead and hit it with a sledgehammer, and you can get this off over the stud, the bolt that's stuck inside there, because you removed the 4 pieces of the head. All right, so this is on there pretty good with the rust. So what I'll go ahead and do is put me a lug nut on there before I go ahead and hit it. Hold on, let me get my mini sledge here. All right, I'm replacing my rotors, so okay. Get my caliper brackets painted. I'll let that dry a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and put my clips in there, abundant hardware, and I'll also put some Sil Glide inside there, put it on my pins, and rub my pins in there and worked it in there. Okay? So then while that's drying, then I'll go over here and I'll work on my hub. Now the hub, you gotta have this nice and clean. You can't have rust build up on it, because if you have a high spot of rust, then the rotor's not gonna sit flat and it won't be true. So when it turns, rotates, it might have a high spot, cause that rotor to go like that, which in turn causes that caliper to go like that. It gives you a pulsation in the vehicle and in your brake pedal, okay? So that's not a very good brake job. So we gotta clean that up. I'll use my die grinder with the sandpaper on the best I can. I got one of these that goes around the lug, the stud, clean it up and also work around it pretty good. And or you can get yourself a real sharp flat blade screwdriver and use that inside here, okay? Scratch it. Alrighty, it's all nice and clean. A wore out disc on the die grinder, angle die grinder. You know, wore out means there's nothing left of it. Works usually the best than a brand new one, because the brand new one don't get in there very good. The smaller one works in there pretty good. And then I'll use the other one for goes around the studs. My final cleanup. Okay, work it all the way around. And now all you need to do is go ahead and put some anti-seize in here fine film all around. Make sure you get inside that hole too. So we're gonna put that back in. Get your new rotors, clean them up, get the shipping grease off of them. Use some soap and water. Get that shipping oil off of them. You can go ahead and put them up there. And once you get that up there, you can put your pin in there, snug it up. You can go ahead and get your caliper bracket, get that prepped and ready to go with the clips in it. Have the rotor on there with my light film of anti-seize underneath it. Put my retainer bolt back in there. Just snugged it up a little bit. Didn't have to torque it or anything. All right. So next thing you need to do is get your caliper bracket. Mine's all painted. Hardware bundle clips are in there. Make sure you get them installed properly. Make sure that these little hooks are on the outside, because otherwise they'll hit the rotor. Make sure that they're bottomed out all the way. And these act like little springs, so when you go them back together, you got to push the pad up against them to push that down so you get the pad in there. Okay, so I'm going to get this mounted, and I'll snug it up, and then I'll torque it to 122 foot-pounds. Make sure you take notice inner and outer. All right, so this is the inner pad, and that's the outer pad. So what I do is, the best thing that I do is I'll go ahead and put that in there first in the bottom, get it squared away. Make sure you get that out of the way, that bracket here. Push that in and get that all the way, and then you can push that one in with that. See how that is? You gotta get that in there. Pretty close. Boom. Try not to bind anything, man. Once it goes, okay? So if it's not going and you push it in there, sometimes you can push that clip in with it and it gets cocked in there and then it'll rub against the rotor. So just gotta be careful. So make sure when you're doing the inner, I'll bottom it out, and I'll make sure that clip is, hard bundle clip is flat, okay? And then I'll try putting the top in, and I'll push in on that one, remember, the spring? And then make sure when you're looking at it, that the top part of the pad and that bundle clip is equal. There's no gap underneath the bundle clip to the bracket, all right? Just make sure you look at it with a light. All right, I got my pads in. The light helped out a lot. Got the bottom in, and then I got the top end. Remember, you push the pad against that spring, and then you can allow you to push that pad into the bracket assembly. All right, so now you got your pistons pushed in your calipers. You got them brushed off. Now use the caliper tool. If you don't have the caliper tool with the ratchet, then you have to use a C-clamp with an old brake pad. Stick it in there, and then squeeze them together. Okay, with the C-clamp. Got my caliper on there. Make sure you squeeze the pads together when you put your caliper on. Make sure you get the little boots underneath the caliper. And then go ahead, lift your caliper up a little bit and put your bottom pin in. And remember, the top one takes the little insulator. And I got a little bit of anti-seize on my threads. And then you can go ahead and line this one up and get it in there and get it finger started. Then you can snug it up. And then you want to torque those to 55 foot-pounds. Another thing, you want to make sure that your bleeder is on the top. And also, your brake line is not twisted. If your brake line is twisted, that means you got to take it back off and turn your caliper around. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and torque mine. All right, this side is complete. Now all you got to do is do the other side exactly the same way. And do not forget that the caliper bracket bolts torque is 122. Slide pins are 55, okay? So now I'm all set to put my tires on. Go ahead and put your tires on when you get both sides done. Torque your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Lower the vehicle down to the ground. Go inside it. Start it up. Push the pedal to the floor a couple times. do not put it in gear until you have a firm pedal, okay? So after you got that all done, firm pedal, shut it off, open the hood, double check your fluid inside your master cylinder reservoir, top it off as necessary. Make sure you get the correct type fluid, all right? 3 or 4, depending upon your make and model, all right? So that's how you do your front brakes. Okay, make sure you do both sides exactly the same, all right? This side is done, so do the other side exactly the same way. And when you get them both done, go ahead and put your tires back on, torque your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds, lower the vehicle down to the ground, go inside the vehicle, start it up, push the brake pedal to the floor a couple times to make sure that those pistons are touching the brake pads. Make sure you got a nice firm pedal. You want to do that before you put in drive and reverse, because if you don't pump up the pedal before that, you won't have any brakes. So pump up your pedal before you put in drive and reverse. And once you get that done, go ahead, shut it off, open your hood, double check your fluid level, and top it off as needed. And double check your dot, 3 or 4, okay? Another important thing is to double check your tire pressures and make sure you set them as well, because that's important also. Okay, so hopefully I helped you this video, and then hopefully you can help me out by subscribing to me, and I appreciate it, and thank you.